Here's our interview with Eric Schneider. As far as just taking us through your life, you grew up in Boston, and the thing that really triggers a lot of the things that happen in the book is your experience in the Boy Scouts. So tell us what happened there.
I joined the Boy Scouts, or actually the Cub Scouts, at a very young age, and enjoyed it for a good portion as a child. From Cub Scouts, I graduated into Webelos, and which inevitably becomes Boy Scouts. There was a group of individuals that ran that specific troop, and we're also very high up in the ranks of the Boy Scouts as far as in the office and the corporate end of it. And unbeknownst to anybody, and unbeknownst to anybody for a long time, we're running a child pedophilia ring out of that troop.
And what was your situation at home during that time? Because I know at some point you were adopted.
I was adopted about 6 months old. My sister was also adopted. We were from separate families, but it was we had everything we wanted for monetarily, but it was a very cold household.
When did you learn you were adopted?
As early as I can remember. They didn't hesitate as soon as we could understand, and probably even before we could understand, we were told. Yeah,
that's a strategy decision that parents make as to when to tell the kid, and I don't know. It used to be they would seem to wait as long as possible to tell, and now it seems like they're being instructed to tell them as early as possible.
Yeah, well, go figure. My parents did it the backwards way, so as they did many things. But
No, I have a personal theory that it's better to wait. But I mean, is that something that kind of weighed on you at any point? This idea that I was adopted and wondering where your real parents were and wondering why they gave you up and abandonment, that kind of stuff?
Never gave much thought to the adoption until I was probably senior year in high school, and then there was a strong want and need to find out who my biological parents were. Not for any other reason than I wanted to know. I'm cut from the stone, and my character is that I need to know things. Even if it's going to be detrimental to me.
And did that happen?
It did. I eventually did find my birth mother. Different situation. It's a touchy subject. Mom, I hope you're not watching. But yes.
So you connected with her, but you're not necessarily bonded with her or staying in close touch?
We did for a number of years, for about 10 years. My first wife actually had a client of hers who was a private investigator, and I had enough information from the situation in Boston. I used some of that leverage to get information that I wouldn't have normally been able to get because Boston is a closed adoption state. Mm-hmm. So I had enough information that within about 15 minutes, she had my birth mother, and lo and behold, I had a half brother, and we had a good relationship for about 10 years.
And did she tell you the circumstances of the putting you up for adoption?
She did. And that's probably the biggest point of contention and why we don't speak today, and what caused the rift between us now is I got a little bit different. I got a story, and in fact, I spoke about it a little bit in the book. She read the book, and she was kind of mortified at what I had said, and started taking some steps back. And I was led to believe it was a date rape situation, and which kind of weighed on me. You think, oh, great, I'm a product of rape. That explains a lot. And then come to find out, as she backpedaled a little bit, that it was maybe more inhibitions were down. There was drinking going on. My father's family, I guess, was incredibly wealthy. Owned an island off the coast of Connecticut, and they were at a summer party at their castle on the island, and drinking, and it sounded a little more like a mutual type. And I was angry. I was mad. I told her, I said, you led me to believe I was a product of rape for all this time, and really, you just you got drunk and wanted some.
How did you learn the other side of the story?
She slowly reeled it out to me, and I, not stupid. I picked up on it, and I called her on it. I said, so you're telling me you guys had too much to drink, and maybe he was a little forceful or aggressive verbally or something like that, but this wasn't an actual date rape situation. And she said, no, it wasn't.
How old was she?
She was, I believe, 21.
And
I'm sorry, 20.
And obviously you need to be forever grateful to her that she didn't have an abortion.
Just plenty of days I wish she did, but yeah, no. In
hopefully
the
this
long
isn't
run,
one of those days.
No, in the long run, well, with some other stuff that's going on, but in the long run, no. I'm very grateful to her. She's a wonderful woman. I see where a lot of my qualities come from. She's very analytical. She's very driven. She's an accountant by trade, and she deals with some anxiety problems. She deals with some control issues, and a lot of that stuff played into what inevitably was a big blow up, and we haven't been able to put it back together. Although I've tried many times, she's just not she's just not having it.
And why didn't she have an abortion?
Yeah, it was staunch Catholic family, New England. You just didn't do that. Although, I mean, some families did, but her family was, she was sent off up to Massachusetts to Harvard for school, and she went to school while she was pregnant with me, and had me while she was still in school, and she told me she had me for about a day and a half at the hospital, and then they took me away, and that was that.
And then what about Dad? Did you find him?
She won't give, another big point of contention, she will not give me enough information to find him. And I think because she, for one, never told him. She told me, he told her that he was in an automobile accident and was sterile, but not have children. Obviously, that's not the case. But the more she tells me, I mean, this is a very, very, very affluent family. And from the last name and the research that I've done, it's his name was, well, I'm going to throw it out there in case you're watching that. His nickname she knows is Sandy, and the last name was Fowler. And so
despite knowing Sandy Fowler as the name, you haven't been able to find him.
I've tried some, but I just don't have enough information. That Sandy was a nickname; it's not his real name. He had the blonde hair, and that's where that came from. But yeah, I've only been doing it myself, and I just haven't had a lot of luck.
Have you done?
She won't come forward with any more information.
Have you done one of the 23andMe type tests?
I did Ancestry&Me. Nothing came back.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, because I know a lot of people.
I think the test was kind of. I think the test never actually made it to Ancestry, and I got some paperwork back that probably wasn't from Ancestry.
Oh,
that was during another chain of events that's been unfolding here. So.
Well, anyway, maybe ought to try again, and maybe try both of them, because there's 23andMe and there's Ancestry. I'm not sure if they share information or not, but I certainly know plenty of stories of people that connected with relatives through that, and including a biological father. A very good friend of mine connected with her biological father through she first connected to like an aunt, and then the aunt told her, "Oh, well, then you must be so-and-so's daughter." And next thing you know, she reconnected.
I think I've narrowed it down to the island. I mean, I think I've narrowed it down to the family tree, to the line. Sandy is often a nickname for Alexander. And I found some good and some bad as far as that goes, but it's not my forte. Yeah, I'm a builder. I don't to do this. All the searching and digging is. And financially, it's just not in the cards right now to pay a private investigator to do that.
And I know in the book you write that your adoptive parents were not the warmest.
No.
Which is kind of surprising, because it's like, why did you go through the trouble of adopting two babies, if you weren't going to be loving them with all of your heart?
Got to round out that picture, that Protestant white picket fence in suburbia. And apparently they paid quite a bit of money for the two blonde-haired, blue-eyed babies. And I just recently, literally maybe 6 weeks ago, found out that I wasn't even wanted. They tried desperately not to adopt me, but the adoption agency would not let them adopt my sister without adopting me, even though we were not from the same families, which doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But I was the I was the throw in,
Wow.
so to say.
Okay, then tell us about what happened in the Boy Scouts, and this is a very current story because we're hearing more and more lawsuits against the Boy Scouts.
Mhm.
First, it was the Catholic Church that got hit with all this, and then it kind of just, hate to say it, but it kind of is not surprising
Blossomed.
that you would see something like that, a similar thing in the Boy Scouts. So, why don't we start with what happened to you, and then we'll talk about that ring that you're talking about that was going on.
Well, the abuse started at about 6 years old. Fairly what I would call innocently, um, and quickly grew into and continued to grow into some very violent, drug riddled behaviors. There was they were of some form of satanic cult. There was ritual stuff that was going on. It was sick, twisted stuff. Even looking back now,
Did this involve just one scoutmaster or more than one?
there was more than one. Unfortunately, only one was able to be brought down. There's a couple out there that are still walking the streets right now that I wish weren't, but it was certainly more than one. It was, yeah, upwards of
More
4 or
than
5.
one that you had a personal experience with.
I was personally abused by 4.
And was it always one-on-one, or was there sometimes a group setting?
No, there were groups of children, groups of adults, groups of them. Sometimes one-on-one. There was no rhyme or reason to it. However it unfolded. There was a lot of.
And what about it? What was the satanic part?
Yeah, I don't know. There was a lot of fake weaponry. There was a lot of fake blood. There was altars. There was candles lit. As a child, you don't understand any of this, but that's the best I could equate to what must have been going on. I don't, and this level of depravity and sickness that these guys carried was, I just can't equate to it.
And one of them is in prison as we speak?
One of them was in prison and
Still
passed
is?
away in prison. No, he died there.
Uh-huh. And that's one of the adults, scoutmasters that abused you.
Yes, he was the main, I would call him, lead abuser. His name was
And did
Lawrence Brielle.
did you testify in his case?
None of us had to testify. I was able to get out of the abuse situation when I was about 11 and a half. I went on the street, bought a gun, and when he came to pick me up one day, I put that gun to his head and told him if he came near me again, that I would kill him. And at the time, I meant it. And that was the last I ever saw of him. But it didn't come out till I was about 16 years old, and in high school, where a young boy did go home, and an incredibly brave boy, and did tell his folks what was going on, because we were made to fear for our lives. We were made to fear for our families' lives. We were told our families would be killed, our sisters, our brothers would be killed, we would be killed. And from 6 years old on, you believe that, and the physical violence that was involved in the abuse and everything else. There was no doubt in my mind that if I even remotely whispered anything about this, that I would die.
And how many children were involved, while at least that you saw personally?
They tracked the abuse back about 30 years. So I don't know what a total number is. I can tell you that there was 8 or 10 of us from the period that I was abused that were pretty regular victims.
And it was always with scoutmasters, not with others.
Always someone involved in scouting, not scoutmasters per se, but some of them were in the corporate office. Some of them were. Sometimes there were women brought into the abuse who were girlfriends, in my case, of the main abuser for me, Larry. But yeah, they're predominantly somehow linked to the Boy Scouts.
Mm-hmm. And did you report it to your parents?
I tried to in the very beginning, in a way that I thought, please. After the very first instance of abuse, at 6, he called again and wanted to come and get me, and I broke down into hysterics, and I please don't make me go. I don't want to go, please. I remember distinctly, and even at 6, I distinctly remember my mother looking at me and telling me what an ungrateful little boy I was. And here Larry was willing to help me and give me his time. And you are going to go whether you like it or not. And from that point right there on, I thought I don't have a choice. Maybe this is supposed to happen to me. And then as time goes on, you think maybe I'm a bad kid. Maybe I've done something. Maybe you're not equipped at those ages to even remotely. You're not equipped as an adult to deal with that kind of stuff. Never mind as a child.
Mm-hmm. And how many total incidents would you say there were for you?
No, I couldn't even begin to count. From 6 to 11 and a half. It was 2-3 times a week. So it numerous. It was.
And it wasn't just when you would go away on some type of a camping retreat.
No, Larry was also, he was the, what you'd call the pillar of the community. He was a school teacher. He was high up in the ranks of not only the scouting office, but of a troop leader himself. He was the chief of police, chief of the auxiliary fire department. He was the photographer for the local paper. He was my soccer coach. He ingrained himself and engrossed himself into anything that he could to stay connected to the boys he would have wanted to abuse. And it baffles me still to this day.
What's Larry's last name?
His name is Brio, Larry Brio, Lawrence Brio, Brehaut.
And he's the one who went to prison for how many years? Was he going to be in there for life?
He was in very, very poor health. He had a couple of heart attacks before he was getting ready to go to trial. They desperately wanted to spare all of us having to take the stand. And he was willing to take a 15-year sentence, which they knew he would never complete. And
how old was he by the time he went to jail?
Oh boy, I would say he was probably early to mid 50s, maybe late 50s.
And what year was it that he went to jail?
I was a senior, I believe, in high school or junior in high school when it came out. So it would have been 85-ish, 1985.
And you believe he had been doing this for decades?
30 some odd years. He had safes in his, what we called the dark room, which incidentally is going to be the new title of the book when it comes out. It's The Darkest Room when it comes back out. But he had a series of safes, and that's how they were able to, that's how they identified us, that the current members in the community, the current boys in the community, through all of the pornography that he had in these safes. But as they dug, they literally went back about 30 years and were able to.
So you're talking about a safe that's in his house?
Safes. He had a lot of the abuse took place. As I said, he was the photographer for the local paper. He had, I would say, probably 12, 14 feet of countertop where a lot of the chemical trays and whatnot in the process took place. And underneath that were just cube safes. And
okay, so you're saying this is in a dark room for photography, and within the dark room are large safes that he kept pornography in.
Correct. Yep.
And is this pornography that he himself created?
Correct. Yep. Or he and the group. We'll call it the group. But yes,
pictures,
he was the one. Pictures, videos. Yeah.
Do you think that they sold it?
They did.
So that was part of what he was convicted of.
Yes. Yeah, they were selling to whatever black market was out there.
But other than him, none of the other people were ever convicted?
He was the only one who they actually had in films, in footage, in pictures. The other members were in pictures, but they weren't. It wasn't of the pornography type. It'd be with your arm around someone or at a scout function or something along those lines. But Larry didn't have a problem being in these films and being in these pictures, and inevitably was.
And what about his? You said there's a woman he would bring in. Was that his wife or girlfriend?
It was a girlfriend at the time, I believe. I think I know who it was. I can't be 100% sure, but I'm 80% sure that I know who it was.
And what about the children? I mean, why aren't, if you've come forward and some other children have come forward, why isn't that enough to get any of these other guys in jail?
I don't know. I really don't know. I don't. It hasn't been pushed in the legal arena. I don't have a problem talking about Lauren. Oh gosh, I'm having Brennan, Bob. What's his name? Bob Berman. Steve Perry, who is dead now. Two very big players in all of it. Bill Berman is driving a school bus up in New Hampshire, and is incredibly sick, twisted. I mean, it takes everything I have not to learn some of my skill set that I learned with the Irish, and to just take justice into my own hands. But
it's Bill Berman. Bill Berman, and he's driving a bus right now.
From what a friend of mine who lives up in New Hampshire from high school told me, that he was driving a school bus up in New Hampshire, and I 100% believe what Nikki told me.
And he would be what, in his 70s or something?
I would say late 70s. Yeah, he was younger than Larry was, and Steve Perry was about Larry's age, maybe a little older, and he's dead.
Okay, there's those three. Who else?
Some of the other ones that were sporadic, they were higher up members of the scouting office. They had the scouting headquarters was in Stoughton, Massachusetts, and they I believe were out of that office. And they would pop in 1 month, and you wouldn't see them for another month or two, and it was very sporadic. I didn't get to know their names.
And is there anyone else who was put in jail over this?
Nope, not a soul.
So going back to Bill Berman, I mean, do you have any intention of doing anything regarding this guy? I mean, are you gonna?
I'll respectfully decline to answer that question under my Fifth Amendment right. I wouldn't. Do I want to on a daily basis? Of course I do. Of course I do. It sickens me that he might be injuring a child out there.
I mean, do you think he's still capable of it today?
Absolutely. No doubt in my mind. He was an alcoholic, drunk, twisted pedophile. That doesn't change.
Are there other boys from that you keep in touch with today?
I do. Quite a few have taken their lives, and the few of us that are left, I do. I communicate with them almost regularly.
Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, sure would be nice to put Bill Berman behind bars, especially. I think that the statute of limitations, because of the Catholic Church cases and so on, in most states they've really extended the statute of limitations when it comes to abuse
it went
of children.
From 7 to 30. 7 years to 30 years. So a lot of people would still be within their statute of limitations, and I think, well, I would even still be within my statute of limitations. I'd prefer to handle it myself if they'd let me. But
yeah, well, you said that Larry went to jail around 1985. So that means the abuse took place prior to that. So that would be outside the 30 years.
Would it be? Let's see. Yeah, it would have been 6. So 74-ish to they'd be outside.
I mean, it would have to be after 1990,
right? Yeah,
at least as it pertains to you, which I assume none of it was more recent than that.
No.
Yeah. So instead, your only option is vigilante, because apparently, if it's 30 years in Massachusetts, then
it is. Yeah, a very good friend of mine was instrumental and actually got that bill passed. Kathy Picard.
I wonder what it is in some other states, because
I think almost all, other than 2 states, have gone to the Catholic Church. Really,
yeah. That's what I could almost see it there being no statute of limitations, because it is so difficult for a child. When a child finally processes that, and then is comfortable coming forward, I don't think any of us.
I don't think there should be any statute of limitations.
Yeah. I mean, maybe it's going to be harder to prove the longer that you wait and so on, but allowing...
Yeah, it sometimes takes decades for abuse victims to really get the full gist of what's happened to them and to really start to feel the effects of it.
So Larry, the guy that did go to jail, and you said was basically the ringleader. Um, if you just knew the guy casually, you were one of his students, you played on his soccer team, you were a parent or whatever, was there, looking back on it, was there anything that should have been a giveaway to other people, or was he truly somebody who was a pillar in the community and you would have no idea?
To me, the entire situation, it baffles me that adults did not see what was going on and see that a single unwed man spending all of his time with young boys, or the majority. This in today's climate, this would ring so many bells and red flags going up that, I don't know how it went on for as long as it did. I don't know how. I think the man was just such a sociopathic, deviant, manipulative man that he people really revered him. I mean, even after there were rallies after he was arrested and after the abuse came to light, and the pictures were known to exist. They were rallying at the head of the lake in the Commons for his release and that he was innocent. And he had a lot of people just snowed. I don't even know what the word would be. But
So, if you're a parent and considering putting your child in the Boy Scouts today, what is your advice to them?
Think twice. The Boy Scouts knew, they had information about Larry Brio and what he was doing and chose to do nothing about it. They, to me, are as guilty, if not more so, than Larry Brio. We have documents in our possession that show that they knew.
And who are some of those people? And are they still around?
These are members, higher up members in the scouting organization, the corporate offices.
I mean,
I don't have the documents in front of me. My attorneys have them, but yeah, we do. I filed a suit before all of this in 2000, I believe it was 6, before all the class action suit and everything out. And mine was thrown out for statute of limitations because it was before the Catholic Church got those laws changed. Once those laws changed, it opened that door back up for me, which is when my suit reopened.
So you and what happened to your lawsuit?
Back then, it was dismissed on statute of limitations.
Right, but then you said you were able to bring it again.
It's now, yeah. It's been reopened. It's current. It's in the court systems. So I've got a sole lawsuit going on, as well as being part of this class action as well.
But if there's a 30-year statute of limitations, then how are you able to?
Well, that statute of limitations starts when you realize the effect that abuse had on you. And a report was done for my sentencing when all the Irish mob stuff had come down, and I was looking at gargantuan years. My attorneys brought in social workers when they found out what had happened to me, because that was the big sticking point. The judges couldn't, how can we give this guy a deal? How can we give him, a reduced sentence when, there's nothing that justifies it. And that's when the abuse came to light as far as my case back then. And so it's when the abuse, when that report was done in 91, that's really when my statute of limitations started.
Gotcha.
Even though the abuse had been quite a while before.
And then how is it that you were able to have your own case and also be part of a class action? What's the difference between those two?
I don't know. That's a question for the attorneys. I guess I never even bothered to ask. I know that I assume that's what it is. I know my case that we had in the courts was reopened. And I know that I've had to answer all of the paperwork that everybody else who's part of this class action has had to.
And is the where's the class action filed? What city?
I want to say it came out of New Jersey somewhere is where it originated. But I quite frankly, I don't give it much thought. I really don't. I don't. I'm letting the attorneys handle it. I let it play out. It's not healthy, and it's not beneficial to me to mire in that stuff. And I've got so much other stuff going on that I'm barely able to hang on to. Would a financial payfall be? It would be well appreciated. It would be great. It would feel nice to feel like there was some justification and some.
What is your
punishment.
assessment? As if you compare what was going on at the Boy Scouts to what was going on to the Catholic Church. So you have priests with altar boys, and you've got scoutmasters with Boy Scouts and Cub Scouts. Do you have any, based on
I
all the
don't have a
research you've
lot
done,
of,
do you have any comparison between those two as to which one might things may be worse?
from what I know of the little, I don't want to say little, but from the small amount that I know of the Catholic Church and some of the cases that I've seen or read, or I would have to say that what I know of the Boy Scouts was quite a bit worse. But I know there
certainly
was
your experience sounded horrendous. I guess my question is, how do we have any idea how widespread we think it is in the Boy Scouts versus Catholic Church?
It's nationwide with both organizations. Maybe a little more worldwide with the Catholic Church. I mean, their wings spread a little further.
I mean, unfortunately, today, and maybe it's not today, maybe this is always, but now we're just realizing it. But anytime a man puts himself in a situation to have access to boys, you have to scrutinize that just a little bit. It's a horrible thing to say, because
I think that's how it should. Yeah, it's unfortunate.
Just
but
like
I think
there's good
it has
cops and bad cops, and we know that 90 whatever percent are good, and the bad cops ruin it for the others. The same is
You're
true.
optimistic.
But the same is true when we talk about men who are coaches in our, whether it be little league coaches, or whether it be teachers, or whether it be scoutmasters, or anything that puts them in the proximity of children.
These are brave people, because I'll tell you what, you wouldn't catch me, and to me, you're setting yourself up for you're scrutinized. But I'm also grateful to them that there are people out there willing to do it.
Mm-hmm. So, tell us about what you think this abuse caused in you, ultimately leading to addictions and a life of crime, et cetera. How do you connect those two?
Oh, well, the biggest thing is it created an intense and deeply rooted anger. I had an anger, a rage against just the world in general for what had happened to me. I had a rage against adults for that they didn't stop it, that people let this go on. Why let this happen to me? That there drove a lot of the behaviors that that really weren't who I was, or who the core of me was. But that led to a lot of the addictions. It led to a lot of the drug use.
How much of it would you say was conscious versus subconscious?
That's a tough question. Looking back at it now, I would want to say a lot of it was conscience, but
I mean, in other words, you specifically were thinking to yourself, you got a raw deal.
Yeah.
You were abused for many years. Your parents weren't there to support you, and I'm pissed off about the whole thing.
At an older age, at the elementary school and junior high and high school level, my mind did not know how to comprehend or deal with the things that had happened, with things that were happening to me. And I think it was more of an unconscious at that point, trying to quash some of that stuff. And that did carry into adulthood too. But I think, addiction takes over at some point, and it's more of a, I need it, and I certainly don't want to feel any feelings. So at that, it's more of a conscious level at that point.
Mm-hmm. At what age did you start acting out, whether it be with drugs or crime?
Almost right out of the gate. Fifth grade, I remember, looking around the classroom and the kids are coloring, and I'm snorting cocaine on my desk. It was.
How do you get cocaine in fifth grade?
Oh, I was a resourceful little bugger. Same way you get a gun at 11. I mean, you're going on the streets. If I wanted something, I found a way to get it. And I hung out with a much older crew.
And again, do you relate that all to the abuse that was going on at the time, that you were trying to In other words,
I
had the
do.
abuse not happened, there would have been no cocaine.
Um, I'm sure there would have. As is probably 80% of the rest of the world, there would have been some experimental. So whether
No.
it
I'm
took
talking
to
about
me
in
or
fifth
not.
grade, though.
Oh hell no, no, I don't. I think it's a very small percentage of fifth graders ripping rails on their desk. I think so. But yeah, I mean, it was anything at that point. I just didn't want. I didn't want to. I didn't want to feel. I didn't know what I was feeling. I didn't understand. I knew these things made me numb, and be it marijuana, cocaine, whatever, pills, whatever, alcohol, whatever I could get my hands on to be numb.
And when did you finally tell your parents?
I didn't. It was brought to them when that boy went home. While I was when I was 16. And told his parents. The state took the case, and the state police were involved, and they contacted my parents and told them what had happened, and they had pictures and brought them in and had them look at the pictures, and then my parents approached me and told me what had happened, and boy, that was one night. I think I took about half the house out, literally.
You took half the house out. You were upset.
No, I removed walls. I mean, doors. Everything came down. I was like a tornado. I just exploded.
Walk us through how that conversation went. What did they say to you when they first approached you on it?
I as soon as they started talking about it, I think I shut off. I think I completely shut off because I don't have a great recollection of the conversation at all. I do have a recollection of that they needed me to come in and they need to talk to me. And that's what started. And I just snapped. And I literally, fists were going, I was studs going through, literally took out, opened up rooms. It was bad.
What do you think was causing the
embarrassment? My high school friends would know what happened to me. There was a fear that was always in the back of my mind. And at that age and in high school, that's the worst thing that could happen to you in the world. You could take a toe or a finger, but I can't be embarrassed in front of my friends. Mm-hmm. And that was the ultimate embarrassment. No one would ever understand what happened to me. And
and how did your parents act toward you regarding the whole situation?
Distant, robotic. That'd be a great word. Robotic. Mm-hmm. They went through the motions. They did what they felt they had to do. They did what they were told to do. My poor dad. He was a very loving, caring guy, and now I can see that. And he was very controlled by my mother, who was more of a cold, calculated, and not a bad person, but come to find out that she had, a lot of abuse and other things in her childhood and background that I'm sure, drove her behaviors. But they did what they felt they were supposed to do in light of what other people would. They were always much more concerned with what other people would think, not what was best for me or best for my sister or best for the family. It was what will other people think. And more often times than not, it was not the right choices that they made.
So there were not warm embraces.
No, it was, and in their defense, that's like trying to give a hug to a tornado. It's
started, even beyond that.
Oh yeah,
day.
that started a train of events that led up to me, becoming involved with the Irish mob and, robbing banks and armored cars for a living and, and a lot of other horrific things. And it kept escalating from that day on.
Did they put you in any type of therapy at 16 when they found this out?
They didn't. I burned down a Chinese restaurant with a lot of people in it. And that was the final straw. My mother's brother, my uncle Fred, was a very, very prominent attorney in Boston and Massachusetts. And he had been able up to this point to keep me out of juvie hall, to keep me out of any kind of real repercussions for my behaviors. But the Chinese restaurant was the final straw. People were injured. And so it was juvie hall or it was rehab. And I was 16. So that was my first stint in rehab. And back then they didn't have child rehab. They threw you right in with the adults. It was a quite experience.
Was it was rehab for drugs and alcohol?
Drugs and alcohol, right?
What about therapy for the abuse?
I think at the time they were hoping maybe that would get thrown in there, and it just didn't.
Have you ever been through therapy for the abuse?
I have, quite extensively.
Mm-hmm. Still in therapy?
No, not at this point.
And why did you burn down a Chinese restaurant?
We had been in there drinking. I was with two buddies who were much older, 4 or 5 years older than me, and there was some Hell's Angels in there that were. The bartender finally said that I wasn't old enough. I was drunk off my ass, and told us no more serving, and we had to leave. And we put up a ruckus, and the bikers came over and intervened, and there was a big brawl and whatnot. We got our butts whooped, and so we thought it was a good idea to go home. We're going to make Molotov cocktails, and we're going to come back and we'll show them. And we did.
So that lands you in rehab. I guess you're lucky it didn't land you in more than that.
Yeah,
but the rehab
today, I'm sure it would land me a lot worse.
Yeah. And then how did you connect with the Whitey Bulger gang?
I was actually, I guess I had gained a reputation throughout the years that was a little broader than the borders that I really thought of. And I was actually approached by someone that a cell that they had needed a fourth member of an armed robbery cell that robbed banks and armored cars, and they wanted to talk to me. And I went and spoke to some gentlemen, and thought at the time, oh, this sounds fun. Sure, let's give it a go. And really, honestly, had no idea what I was getting involved in. But
at what point did you learn that it was connected with Whitey Bulger, and did you know anything about him at the time?
I didn't know. I quickly knew who Jimmy was. I didn't know the stature that he had. I really didn't give a lot of heed to any of it. To me, it was something adventurous and fun, and sure liked the money, and the drugs and women were fantastic. And why would I want to not do anything else? And but as time went on, I began to figure out who Jimmy was, and as not only a member of the Irish mob and heading up the Irish mob in New England there, but of what kind of human being he was. And that's when things became uncomfortable.
So he was known as Jimmy to all you guys and Whitey to the rest of us?
You never called him Whitey. No, that would be very bad.
Uh-huh.
Yeah, he did not like that name. Jim or Jimmy or...
Yeah, my knowledge of the mob is relegated to movies. So, did they have the whole thing where you're a made man and all that kind of stuff with his gang?
The Irish were very disorganized. The Irish would take anybody if you're willing to do heinous things and act like an idiot. Then you're in.
Mm-hmm. But basically, he was running the crime syndicate, though.
He was.
And ultimately, what would you guess at its height he had as far as guys working for him?
Oh, I mean, Winter Hill Gang went way back to late 50s, I think, early 60s. I mean, over the years, hundreds. But at any given time, I mean, I knew there was, in excess of 100 or so of us.
And would you say, was he the biggest in the Boston area or not?
No, and that's why the feds, the FBI, was making this allegiance with him. The Italians were much more in the spotlight. They were much more, the movies were being made about them. So as long as Jimmy was providing them with information about the Italians and able to, help them bring Italians down, and that's what played out in the TVs and the news. They were willing to turn their back on what Jimmy was doing. They just didn't have any idea of what Jimmy was actually doing, and the amount of people who were disappearing. And it was.
So yeah, that's the big controversy, I guess, is the fact that the FBI allowed him to continue to do what he was doing in exchange for ratting out larger groups, right?
Yeah,
You're saying the
friends
Italian
of
mafia.
mine. Yeah. Cadillac Frank, Raymond Patrick. Those are friends. I mean, I knew them. They were friends. And yeah, in fact, I was cellmates with one of them, and yeah, none of us knew. None of us knew what Jimmy was doing until the feds broke it, and that when that arrest warrant came out, he was a smart, incredibly intelligent, sick individual.
But those other mafia groups, they're the competition. So the fact that he was ratting them out is not necessarily
the competition, but we all shared, and everybody still kind of worked hand in hand. But you were on the outside. On the outside, you were different organizations. You weren't enemies, but you weren't friends.
You respected each other's business and territories,
right? And you didn't as well.
Right.
But
so how is it, so Jimmy / Whitey was very fortunate that he didn't get whacked by one of these Italian mobs when this came to light, right?
Oh, there were attempts, but Jimmy was always one step ahead of him. There was a lot of attempts, a lot of plans, a lot of plots. He just always seemed to have that piece of information that he needed to not be where he should have been, or to,
So at some point you were caught, arrested for something you did. Tell us that story.
It's a long call. It's a pretty in-depth story, but I'll give you the cliff notes. We had an armored car driver who was retired and gave us routes and gave us you can't just walk into a bank and hit a bank. You could hit the vault. There might be $7,500 in there. So we made sure that the vaults had just been filled, or the armored cars were carrying large amounts, and we got that inside information. And so we became suspect after the armored car driver gave us up. He became suspect and gave us up, and then they very quickly put everything together, and secret indictments were put together and handed down, and it all happened very quickly.
So it's one of those situations where everybody's ratting out the guy above them.
No, not at all. No, there really wasn't a lot of ratting.
But what I mean is the armored car guy, they had busted him. He points the finger at you guys.
He gave us up pretty quickly, and they were able to they put a lot together very quickly, and those indictments came down. Johnny was picked up immediately. Bobby was picked up right after him. I went into hiding in an Italian mob friend of mine's who was in Vegas for the winter, and so I'm hiding in a house in Massachusetts in end of December, January, and through February with no heat, no water, no kicking an ungodly amount of heroin and coke and alcohol and everything. It was a brutal time. It was horrific, and after a period of time, I thought, they got Johnny, they got Bobby, Ronnie was on the run somewhere and in Florida, and they didn't have enough to get me. I thought, I got to change my life. This has got to stop. And I knew I had a speeding ticket for a warrant for a speeding ticket that I needed to clear up. That was the only thing that I could think of that was out that I needed to start this quote new life. And sure enough, I had a crooked cop that we had on the payroll take me down to the courts, and so I could get this cleared up. And well, they had other plans. The secret indictment was in the computer waiting, and when my name hit, it was
Wow.
Hell hath no fury. His gates of hell open.
And ultimately, you did a plea deal.
I did,
and put you in the witness protection program.
No, that's the media likes to portray it as the witness protection program. I'm not in any form of the witness protection program. 30 years ago, I was given a new name and a new social security number, and through the Attorney General's office, and that's the gist of it. I don't answer to anybody. I'm not in anybody's control, and the testifying that was done, again, very very complex plan, and very calculated, and a couple of different
So did
things in
you
play.
spend time in prison
I did.
for that? How much time?
Mm-hmm. I was in for about 2.5 years. Nothing substantial. I was looking at,
so that was part of the plea deal, though, was you've got to
time served.
give up some people,
Mm-hmm.
and
which inevitably saved a lot of other people. And and I was given time served.
And was Jimmy Bulger one of the ones that they wanted information on?
That they were.
Mm-hmm.
And I was supposed to, part of my plea deal was I was supposed to give all that information at that time. Anything I had been involved in, anything I had done, anybody I knew, and I didn't. I didn't give a lot of what I knew or who I knew. And I kept it very localized to who I was supposed to. And in writing the book, I've irritated the government, let's just say, and they're not real happy with me. I think they feel like maybe I made them look stupid or silly or something. I don't know. But
is it that
writing
you
that
shared,
book opened up a can of worms for me?
So you shared information in the book that you didn't share with them? Is that
correct?
And
that I purposely withheld it, and I don't think they're real happy about that.
And you're saying there's some truth to that?
Yes, very much so.
And you withheld it just to protect these individuals? Your friends, your coworkers.
They weren't who I was supposed to be bringing down, and they weren't the ones who were threatening my life. I mean, I took a 40-year plea bargain, and was completely prepared to start that sentence and to do that. And they wanted me, my co-defendants, along with what else was going on in the background, they wanted me to testify for them after I was sentenced, and the federal government found out about that and very quickly made me aware that I would be doing my 258 years on top of my 40. And so it came down to, you're young, you don't have and you'll be well taken care of in here, and you're going to do it, or we're going to kill you. So that obviously played into it too. There was a lot of stuff going on.
Did you ever actually take the stand in a criminal case against someone?
Yeah. Against the three of them. Yeah, absolutely.
And then what about once Bulger was arrested, which was in 2011,
correct,
close to where I am here in Santa Monica, California?
Yep.
Did they contact you about that?
They tried. I was actually in prison in Florida.
And ultimately, he pled to something, right?
Yeah, I believe he pled to the original, or some of the original 19 counts of murder. I think he pled, to 3 or 4 of them. And
then he was murdered in prison.
Yeah, he was murdered by the federal government. Yeah, he sure was.
You say by the federal government. What do you mean by that?
Oh, the federal government absolutely waited their allotted amount of time so that they could. They weren't going to let Jimmy get away with what he made the FBI look like. A group of kindergarten kids on a field trip that lost on a bus. I mean, he played the FBI in ways that they were not going to let just fly. So they waited their allotted amount of time, and they moved Jimmy to a facility where they knew was heavily populated by Italian hitmen, and knew he probably would last a day or two. And I think he lasted about 12 hours.
Was someone convicted of his murder?
I believe so. I don't. Yeah, I believe he was.
But these would have been Italian mafia hitmen retaliating for the fact that he had been cooperating with the FBI.
That Jimmy either put away or was instrumental in helping in some form put away.
There's a movie with Johnny Depp, right, where he plays Bulger.
Yes. Black Mass.
Black Mass. Yeah, I haven't seen it. Is it? I assume
pretty
you've seen
realistic.
It. Is it accurate?
Yeah, I've seen it, and then had a little part in it. It's very accurate as to the whole story and how things kind of played out and what happened.
So tell us what's going on with you today in light of the book, and you're saying that you believe the FBI is not real pleased with you.
I think it probably started there. To make a long story short, I've ended up on a list that I'd prefer not to be on, and I'm being brutalized at many levels. I've lost my home, my business, I live in my car. My being physically harmed. There are things going on that I couldn't even begin to comprehend. I have picture and video footage. Hundreds, thousands that you can't even comprehend.
And you're being tormented, you believe, by the federal government?
Yeah, absolutely.
Not the Italian mob?
No. Absolutely not. No, the Italian mob, are you kidding me? That's still a lot of mostly friends of mine. I still keep ties with people to make sure I know what's going on and whatnot. But I by no means live that life anymore. I haven't for a very long time.
Thank you again to Eric Schneider. You can check out his book, The Choir Boy. That is on Amazon. Thank you also to our producer, Michael Parker. We'll be back soon with another episode of The Hidden Truth Show.
Thank you for listening to The Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow. You can find us at hiddentruthshow.com. Follow us on Facebook, Twitter, and Instagram at Hidden Truth Show. Join us again next week for another episode of Hidden Truth Show with Jim Breslow.